Part B. This is going to be the difference between rest and exercise on this experiment, the blood buffer simulation. So you can see the flask on the left is labeled the rest flask. The flask on the right is the exercise flask. Again, we're only doing one trial here, not two. And we're just going to check down through this list. So in each flask, we start off. Step 9, we have our 2 flasks. We've labeled them. Step 10 says place 50 mils of deionized water into each flask. And we've done that. And the next thing we'll do is add our indicator, 2 drops into each flask, swirl it, and then we will start adding NaOH first to the rest flask and then to the exercise flask to get the solution pink, okay? And then we'll walk through the other steps as we go, but I'm going to go ahead and start the video. So this is the indicator being added to each flask, 2 drops into the rest flask. If we don't add the indicator, we will not see a color change. Remember, phenolphthalein changes colors based on pH. At acidic pHs, it is colorless, and at basic pHs, it turns pink. So 0.05 molar NaOH has been added to both flasks. I believe that's 2 drops. Yep. So it took 2 drops to get a vibrant pink in each flask. So had we been doing this in the lab, one of you or your lab partner would have been what we call the lab rat, and the other one would have been the scientist. And we just did step 15. They blew slowly into the flask for 5 seconds. The flask labeled rest, and the solution did turn colorless within those 5 seconds. So now they're adding drops of 0.05 molar NaOH into the flask, and we're counting the number of drops it takes to turn it pink again. This is step 16 on our procedure at the bottom of page 3. They're just putting a lid on the flask so that nothing evaporates, nothing lightens the color. So it took 9 drops in the rest flask to turn the solution pink. They just went and exercised. You can tell they're breathing heavily now. So that was step 17, the quote lab rat. I don't know if he climbed stairs or whatever, but 1 minute to get heart rate up, and you can hear they're breathing heavy. They just blew into the flask to turn it clear again, and now we are on step 18, where they are adding drops of 0.05 molar NaOH to return the solution to a pink color. And we're going to count how many drops it takes. Again, there's a post-lab question on this part of the lab. So think about, you can hear, again, they're breathing heavy because they've been exercising. We said when you exercise, you increase the concentration of CO2 in your tissues. And we know that the blood is going to take that CO2 out of our tissues, bring it up to the lungs. And the concentration of CO2 in our breathing will be elevated. We're breathing heavier, so we have an increased rate of respiration. So think about how that might affect the number of drops of NaOH that it takes to turn our solution pink. If you've finished exercising and you have a lot of CO2 in your lungs, in your breath, and you're breathing heavily into the flask, think about how it affects, while we're waiting for the drops, how it affects this equilibrium, okay? If we're breathing more CO2 into our flask, think about how it affects the concentration of these products and what that does to pH. Looks like we're almost there. Might be the last drop. And it looks like it is. So after swirling, it took 15 drops to turn the solution from colorless back to pink for the exercise flask. After breathing into the flask, the rest flask, it only took 9 drops of NaOH to turn the solution pink again. So clearly we see it took more drops of NaOH to turn the solution pink again in the exercise flask than it did in the rest flask. And so the challenge to you is to think about why. All right, that's the end of part B. We will do part C next.